ExpressLRS has released a new major version, ExpressLRS 4.0. In this video, we're going to go over the major changes in ExpressLRS 4.0, and a couple of them are things that at least I have been wanting for a long time and complaining about, and they finally fixed them. Does that mean I should take credit for this? Probably not. I'm a humble man. We're going to go over the new features of ExpressLRS 4.0 and a couple of gotchas that might make you want to hold off on upgrading. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. The first thing you need to know about ExpressLRS 4.0 is that ExpressLRS 4.0 is not backwards compatible with previous versions of ExpressLRS. The way that ExpressLRS works is each major version breaks compatibility. So ExpressLRS 2.x, 3.x, that's the one we've been on until just now, and now ExpressLRS 4.x, they're not cross-compatible. This is just something that the devs need, like why don't they just make everything backwards compatible forever? Well, sometimes there are changes you want to make that in order to make that change you get a big advantage, but it breaks compatibility with previous versions. You just eventually have to draw the line somewhere, and this is how they do it. What that means is that if you flash your controller to ExpressLRS 4.x, and you have a whole bunch of other drones with receivers in them, and they have ExpressLRS 3.x, they will not be able to bind. You will need to update all of your other drones to ExpressLRS 4.x as well before they'll bind. So this is an all or nothing step that you're going to take unless you keep two controllers or a separate module, and you've got one module that is ExpressLRS 4.x and one that's back on 3.x. That would be something you would do if you had a whole bunch of drones and you didn't want to just upgrade them all at the same time. So number one, do not just run out and immediately flash your controller. You need to understand that you're going to have to do your whole fleet at the same time. And if you're okay with that, then, well, watch the rest of this video and make sure that it's still like something you want to do. Because although there are some changes in ExpressLRS 4.x that are pretty freaking cool, at the end of the day, there's not anything there that's like, oh, I've doubled my range. There's little things that might be worth upgrading for. But if you're a person who's just, oh, I'm so annoyed with all this ExpressLRS flashing, you can just stay on the version of 3.x that you're currently on. It probably works fine. But if there is anything that like annoys you about ExpressLRS, maybe 4.x fixes it. Whenever I make a video about ExpressLRS, people come with a lot of questions, and this is not the video to answer those questions, but I do have a whole bunch of videos answering basic and some not so basic questions about ExpressLRS. In the video description below is a link to this playlist, my ExpressLRS playlist, and the first video on that playlist, the ExpressLRS Complete Beginner Guide, should be where you start if you're new to ExpressLRS, if you just want to make sure you have a solid foundation of knowledge and you're not missing some key things. In addition to the beginner guide, which has all the fundamentals, there's more advanced topics like changing VTX channel with your FPV goggles, the ExpressLRS bind button and how they made it finally work and how it works a little differently than you might be used to, a way to unbrick an ELRS receiver with this programming adapter, and more and more. But if you're new to ExpressLRS and this just happens to be the video you stumbled upon, I'm going to recommend you check out that playlist. So let's go through the ExpressLRS 4.0 release notes, and yes, you're more than capable of reading the release notes yourself, and I'll put a link in the video description if you want to read them yourself. But let's go through them, and I'll hopefully add some additional explanation to help add context that maybe, well, hopefully you don't have. That's why you're watching the video. In addition to being incompatible with older versions of ExpressLRS, ExpressLRS 4.0 also requires that you download an updated Lua script. Lua script is the thing when you get on the radio and you go to the tools menu, you go right down here, ExpressLRS. That thing is a script. It's written in a programming language called Lua, and there is an updated Lua script. If you try to use ExpressLRS 4.0 with the older ExpressLRS Lua script, I tried it and it just didn't load. It just acted like nothing was there. I'm not actually sure what the incompatibility is, but they recommend you upgrade, and you definitely should. If you're not sure how to do that, again, go back to my ExpressLRS Beginner Guide. It shows you how to download and install the Lua script. This is significant because your radio probably already has the Lua script on it, but it's probably the older version, and so if you've never updated it before in your life, this is going to be the first time you're going to need to do it. ExpressLRS 4.0 also removes support for STM32 based hardware. Now, chances are that you don't have any STM32 based hardware. STM32 is the microprocessor that is on the module or the receiver, and most ExpressLRS hardware today uses a ESP32, which is just a different microprocessor. Way back in the day when ExpressLRS first came out, some of the hardware that you would run it on used STM32 chips, and it basically doesn't exist anymore, and they've removed support for it. The main reason today that someone would want to use STM32 is that they're trying to be NDAA Blue compatible. That is a thing that mostly government, military, federal people care about, where they're supposed to buy stuff that doesn't contain components from certain potentially hostile nations, China being one of them. ESP32 chips, they all come, there's no NDAA Blue compatible version of an STM30 or an ESP32 chip, but there are STM32 chips, and in fact, there are manufacturers out there now making ExpressLRS hardware with STM32 chips specifically to sell to the military. Interestingly, because ExpressLRS is an open source project, I'm 99% sure that they're just going to put support for STM32 back in the code base and keep selling it, but officially ExpressLRS doesn't support that anymore, and they say NDAA Blue can eat our shorts. Fair enough. One of the most annoying things about ExpressLRS has been that it requires channel 5 to be your arming channel, and it requires channel 5 high to be armed and channel 5 low to be disarmed. If you've ever noticed that with your ExpressLRS receiver only puts out 2 positions on channel 5, low and high, and you've wondered, why does it do that? That's why. And the reason for this is that ExpressLRS has some stake in knowing whether the drone is armed or not. There are 2 main things that ExpressLRS cares about. One is if you're doing dynamic power, where the power of the transmitter goes up and down as the receiver gets further away, then dynamic power only works when the drone is armed. The other thing is if you're doing telemetry, one of the telemetry settings is race mode telemetry, and in race mode, when the drone is armed, the telemetry transmissions stop. With ExpressLRS 4.0, the default behavior is just like before. Channel 5 is only a 2-position channel. You do not get full resolution on channel 5, and channel 5 is used to tell the module whether the aircraft is armed or not. But the difference is with 4.0, you can set it a different way. So here in the radio, I'm going to press the model key, and I'm going to page to the model setup screen. And this is where I can set up my internal module. Now you can see here are the normal settings for your internal ExpressLRS module or your external module if you have an external one. But there's an additional setting here, and that is ARM using. And it's currently set to ARM using channel 5. If I click on that option, I can change it to ARM using a switch, and I can just tell ExpressLRS, hey, this is my ARM switch, or whatever switch you're using as your ARM switch. So here I can set that to be whatever switch I want, and then I set that in the ARM position, and I'm telling ExpressLRS when this switch is in this position, then the quadcopter is armed. And the difference here is that you don't need to tie up a channel to carry that information. If you make this change, channel 5 now behaves just like any of the other channels, and you can put your arming on whatever channel you prefer as long as you tell ExpressLRS which switch you're using for arming. ExpressLRS 4.0 has removed an option, which normally you would think would be a bad thing, but it's removed an option and instead made it automatic and work transparently in the background, which I guess is a good thing. The RX mode option was used with Gemini transmitters to tell the receiver how the receiver's antennas should work. So if I have a Gemini transmitter and a diversity receiver, the receiver could be in diversity mode where it listens to both antennas at the same time and picks the strongest one, or Gemini mode where it listens to both antennas at the same time and picks up 2 different transmissions between them. And there was a lot of synchronization that needed to happen between the transmitter's antenna mode and the receiver's antenna mode, and that's kind of why I just left it all in Gemini all the time and assumed it would work itself out. Well, that wasn't true, but now it is. With ExpressLRS 4.0, this option is gone, and the receiver automatically selects the correct antenna mode, whether that's diversity or Gemini, or whether it's just got a single antenna and it's not going to do any of that stuff, and that is automatically negotiated between the transmitter and the receiver. If you're using ExpressLRS with PWM receivers, and some people out there are saying right now, what, ExpressLRS has PWM receivers? Yes, it does. And if you're using it, you may have been annoyed by the fact that you couldn't get the ExpressLRS receiver to output extended servo ranges. Now, A lot of people don't use extended servo ranges. They just use the standard ranges. But if you needed the extended servo ranges, now you can have them. ExpressLRS receivers now have a servo stretch mode, which extends the channel input up to 500 to 2500 microseconds of output. This also works with the failsafe ranges. You can failsafe between 476 and 2523 to let you put the servo wherever you want it when you failsafe it. ExpressLRS supports dynamic power, but I've never used it. The theory behind dynamic power is that you use less power when the drone is close, and as the aircraft gets further and further away, you detect that the signal is getting weaker and you increase the power. And in fact, that's how it works. The reason I don't use it is I don't like that as the aircraft gets further away, okay, the transmitter's at 10 milliwatts, the aircraft gets further away, the RSSI gets weak, the signal to noise ratio gets bad, the LQ goes down, 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 and then suddenly the transmitter goes, oh, I need to increase the power, I'm about to failsafe. It cranks the power up, and then the LQ jumps back to 99. I don't like my LQ to go down, 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 down. And I'm like, am I about to fail safe? And then it jumps back up again. I'm like, oh, phew, I'm okay. Because someday it's going to go down, 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 down. And I'm already going to be at max power. And I'm going to fail safe and it's not going to be there to save me. The new statistical adaptive dynamic power algorithm is intended to, well, first of all, instead of using fixed SNR values, when the SNR gets to this point, you crank the power. It uses statistical modeling. And the idea is that it's going to try to just keep the RSSI at 99% all the time. And I like that. It sounds like it's fixed my main complaint. When I see LQ going down, I want to know that there's no more power to give. We see here in this graph of a real flight, the green line is LQ and the red line is transmit power. And we can see the transmit power going up and down and trying to keep that LQ pretty close to, well, it's never going to stay at 99% exactly, but staying in the 92 to 100% range. That's what we want. If I normally see LQ vary between like 90, 95 to 100% during normal flight. It's only when it gets down into the 80s and the 70s that I start getting concerned. And now the dynamic power algorithm will hopefully keep it from doing that. I'll give it a try and we'll see if it actually works that way in real life. ExpressLRS 4.0 has significantly updated and improved the web interface. If we look here, first of all, the web interface no longer looks like some, child's website from 1995. It looks like a kind of a modern website. There are many tabs that used to be only accessible via like secret URLs that you had to know. They weren't really secret, but you couldn't just open up the website and click them. So for example, here in the Advanced tab, we have access to the hardware layout. If you've never touched this, great. You normally shouldn't touch this. You could just make your receiver or your transmitter not work. But if you did need to touch this, it's right there. And I don't know what continuous wave is. I've never even seen this before. Maybe it's always been there. I don't know. What's it for? I don't know. I'm going to leave it alone. The web interface is significantly better organized and better looking and easier to navigate. One thing to keep in mind though, if you update ExpressLRS 4.0, any custom hardware.json and options.json set from the WebUI options tab will be lost during the update. In other words, if you have gone to this hardware.html page previously and you've made changes, you will lose those changes in the update. But don't worry, all you need to do is go to the import-export page, or well, it's probably somewhere else in ExpressLRS 3.0, but it's there. You're going to export the settings, and then after you do the update, you can import the settings and it'll restore those changes for you. This is a big one if you fly DJI or Walksnail and you have any vehicles that don't have a flight controller. DJI and Walksnail video transmitters go into low power mode because they'll overheat and stop working if they're in full power mode when the aircraft isn't moving. They stay in low power mode all the time, and then when the aircraft arms, they come and they go to full power mode. But what if you don't have a flight controller? What if you have a ground vehicle, or you have an airplane without a flight controller? It's just an older, servo-based airplane with a PWM receiver. You can actually buy these little gadgets. Oh my God, this is $51. No offense to Chad Rains, but that seems like a lot to pay just to tell your 03 or 04 air unit that you have armed and to tell it to go to full power. Good news, and sorry to Chad Rains, good news, you can set your ExpressLRS receiver to talk to your 03 or 04 and we'll tell it it's armed without without you needing to spend 50 bucks on a little utility. So ExpressLRS receiver now can just do that for you. That's kind of cool. I guess if I want to show you how to do it, that'll be a separate video because I don't have a receiver on 4.0 right now. The ability to arm and disarm an O3 or O4 air unit with an ExpressLRS receiver really emphasizes that ExpressLRS is trying to become useful for more than just I'm a receiver that talks to a flight controller. They're trying to make these receivers and their whole ecosystem useful also in a standalone way. Here's another way that they've done that. You can now connect a GPS unit directly to the receiver. See, normally the receiver has TX and RX and it connects to a flight controller. You can connect it directly to a GPS unit instead of a flight controller, and then it will act like a GPS tracking tag. It'll send the GPS information back to your controller, and you can save it as telemetry data, or you can look at it on your screen, or do whatever you need to do. Heck, you can even connect this controller up to a piece of software like ground control or ATAC, and you can see the position of that receiver and GPS tag on a map. That's pretty cool. If you have a device that doesn't have GPS and you want to be able to track it with GPS, even though it doesn't have it, it's basically just a poor man's GPS tracker. ExpressLRS has always had the ability to do wireless head tracking, but it's had some limitations. One of the limitations has been that it doesn't send all of the channels that the receiver can support. And the other thing is that it sends that information through the backpack, but you couldn't send the channels from the ExpressLRS backpack into the Edge TX system. It could only send them through the backpack to other things that were connected to the backpack. I think that's right because, to be honest with you, I've never done wireless head tracking and I'm only reading about the limitations of previous versions. But regardless, ExpressLRS 4.0, if you use that feature, can now send the backpack data directly to Edge TX instead of having to send it through the backpack to something else connected to the backpack, and it can support an arbitrary number of channels, so presumably as many channels as ExpressLRS is capable of supporting. It's designed for wireless connected pedals, which are available now, and wireless trainer mode in the future. That's pretty exciting that ExpressLRS will enable wireless trainer mode via backpack. That's a capability that has always seemed like, why aren't they doing this? It seems obvious that they would, and it seems like finally they're catching up, and I'm sure they had a lot a lot to do with their development time other than develop that feature. But presumably in the future you will not need to have a trainer cable between you and the other pilot you're trying to teach, and you will not need to have like a Bluetooth module or some other separate wireless module in order to get that functionality. If you have the 1121 chip in your radio, that's the dual band 900 megahertz and 2.4 gigahertz chip, you get access to expanded packet modes with ExpressLRS 4.0. Many of these packet modes are going to be a little bit esoteric. Like, why would you want K1000 packet mode instead of FLRC 1000? What even is DVDA mode or DK mode? You don't know, and this is not the video where I'm going to try to explain it to you. But the bottom line is that there are additional packet modes, and if you're looking for something more than just the traditional, I'm sending 250 hertz and that's it, like the K1000 mode uses a different kind of encoding to give you faster throughput at reduced range. The DVDA mode, I believe they send packets twice for increased reliability, and you have access to way more of those. This is normally the part of the video where I would try to get you to join my Patreon and try to get you to give me money. But when I'm talking about an open source project like ExpressLRS, it kind of doesn't feel right. The ExpressLRS devs put in a ton of work, and as far as I know, they do it all for free without any direct monetary compensation. But that doesn't mean they don't need your money. The ExpressLRS project needs money to buy hardware, to buy server space, to buy, buy bandwidth, websites. Who knows what they buy, but they need money in order to keep the project going. And they have an open collective page, which I'm going to link below, where you can donate. You can either make a one-time donation or you can make a recurring donation. I recently signed up as a recurring donator at, I believe it was $100 a month. Because I was like, you know what? I get so much benefit from the work these guys do. My career wouldn't be the same without it. I need to support them. And if you feel the same way, throw them a donation. The link is in the video description below. And that's what's new in ExpressLRS 4.0. I will be updating to ExpressLRS 4.0 just because I feel like as a content creator, it's kind of incumbent on me to be trying out the latest and greatest and finding out if there's any gotchas for you guys. But let's face it, I'm not going to be able to do all of it. I don't do a lot with PWM receivers, for example. I'm not doing a lot with some of those esoteric packet modes and so on. So if you've tried ExpressLRS 4.0 and you've got any comments, gotchas, or things people need to know, or anything you think I overlooked in this video, tell me down in the comments and I'll see you there. This video is going to be part of my ExpressLRS playlist, which I'll put a card on screen and a link in the video description below. Although all the videos so far have been about ExpressLRS 3.x, 99% of that information is still valuable and still accurate, even with ExpressLRS 4.0. So hopefully there's still some good content there for you to check out. I'll see you there.